Welcome back to Koine Corner. Today is the second part in a three-part series examining John chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So as I said, we're on part 2. We're looking at the second clause, and the Word was with God. Last week we looked at the first clause, in the beginning was the Word, and we looked at how John's choice of the verb as well as the sentence construction told us that in the beginning, when the beginning was happening, when everything was starting, the Word, this embodied presence of the intent and will of divinity, was existing at that time. And the consequence of that was he couldn't be a part of what was produced at the beginning, not a part of the product of creation, but pre-existed the beginning, as it were. So that's clause A. Today we look at clause B, and the Word was with God, and let's take a look at it in Koine. Kai ho logos ein pros ton theon. So kai ho logos and the Word, ein is our imperfect verb, was, he, she, or it was, and then pros ton theon, with God. The Word was with God. So clause B gives us two articular nouns, ho logos, the Word, and ton theon, God in the accusative, and the accusative case, not being accused, for those of you who've forgotten your grammar, and it gives us this prepositional phrase showing the relationship between the two nouns. What's the relationship between ho logos and ton theon? The Word and God. The Word was with God. So it answers the question, at the beginning, what was the relationship between ho logos and ton theon? The relationship between the Word and God. The Word was with God. Let's think about that verb for a second. Again, from last week, if you watched last week's episode, we said he chose to use an imperfect verb, which is linear action in the past. So we're talking about in the beginning, the creation story, clearly in the past. But in that past, the Word already was, right? Linear action already existed in the beginning. And here, during that time, we're told that the Word was with God, continually in the past, together with God. So the big question for us this week is the preposition. Let's take a look at the preposition pros for a moment. Pros, in its purest sense, means towards. If we were going to use it with a transitive verb, it would definitely be showing movement or motion. So if I said to you, the man is walking toward the house, the word here toward, if we were to write it in Koine, we would use pros, right? So the man is walking toward the house. He's going toward his home. That's the nature of pros when it's used with a transitive verb, like walking. But what about when we use it with a stative verb, like ein, eimi, estin, a form of to be? It shifts from showing motion or movement to showing inclination or relationship. So what we wind up getting here with this imperfect form of eimi and pros with this intransitive verb, with this stative verb, is the word that was at the beginning, that was already existing at the beginning, was present together with God at that beginning, but it's more than just being present. It's not limited to the idea of proximity. There are other prepositions available if we just wanted to express proximity. So we do know that John is saying, in the beginning was the Word, at that beginning the Word was, and that Word was in proximity together with God, physically in the same place, occupying the same space with God. But he's saying more than that, because there are four basic ways to construct the sentence, and the Word was with God. We've already looked at the one John chose with pros, and we'll come back to that. But let's take a quick look at the other three ways that he could have said it and how that would shift the meaning by the semantic difference in the prepositions. So, if he just wanted to say that the Word was in proximity to God, if he only wanted to address the physical locus at the time of beginning, he wouldn't have used pros, he would have used para. So let's take a look at it. Kai ho logos ein para to theo. So para, with modifying a noun in the dative case, so here it's to theo in the dative case, would be translated to give the most meaning to the preposition, and the Word was alongside God, and the Word was next to God. So para most literally means alongside or next to, right? So a parable is a story that is para, alongside, and bole, thrown alongside reality to show you something about reality. So if he had said, Kai ho logos ein para to theo, John would have been saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was next to God. The Word was alongside God, which would address the proximity, but nothing more. Now, there are two ways that he could say relationally the Word was with God, but they don't share the proximity component. So he could have said, let's look at both of those together. He could have said, Kai ho logos ein meta to theou. So we've gone from the dative with para back to the genitive, or here to the genitive with meta. And we would translate it, and the Word was together with God. But meta is together in the sense of association, of close association. So if we associate logos and theon from John's original, I said it answers the question, what was the relationship between the Word and God at the beginning? If he had chosen meta, he would say they were associates, they were close associates. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word and God were closely associated. Not necessarily physically, but in priorities and purposes, etc. Now let's look at the last prepositional choice, which is soon, and that goes back to using the dative. So, kai ho logos ein soon to theo, and the Word was together with God. But here, soon is more like an intimate personal relationship. So not just a purpose inclination, not like we're on the same page, but we are closely affiliated in a relationship. We are closely bound in a relationship. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word and God were super tight, if you chose soon. So three different options that we've looked at: para, meta, and soon, none of which John chose. John chose pros. Why did John choose pros? Pros with a stative verb gives us the opportunity to see both spatial aspect, proximity, and relational inclination. What is their inclination toward one another? In fact, we think about the words pro and con, and here we take pro and pros as cognates, they're related. If you are pro something, you are inclined toward it. You're favorable toward it. If you are con, you're against. You're declining from it. You don't lean into it. You lean away from it. So if we look at John's choice of using pros, with the stative verb, we get to see that in the beginning, the Word was already existing and was both physically with God, spatially with God, was occupying the same place, but was also relationally inclined toward, had a favorable aspect toward God. They were in it together. Does that I hope that makes sense of why he chose pros rather than para, rather than meta, rather than soon. So the Word is inclined toward God. The Word was in a friendly relationship with God, both spatially and relationally together at the beginning. So look at this very expanded, somewhat bloated, paraphrase summary that I've put together to capture the movement and the meaning of clause A and clause B. So if we take them at their as they're constructed, John is essentially saying, in the beginning, when the beginning was happening, the Word already was existing and was both physically present with God and relationally inclined toward God. So that's what John's choices give us. In the beginning was the Word. The Word already was existing when the beginning happened. And the Word was with God in relational aspect, involving inclination, and physically present there at the time of that creation, at the time of that making. So let's think about John's audience for a moment. Whoever he's writing to probably has a Jewish background and are therefore monotheists, believers in one God. If they're Gentile in their background, in their history, their personal history, they may not be monotheist in their thinking. So now, John's introduction to his gospel, to his story about Jesus, in clauses A and B in verse 1, open up Pandora's box in a sense. If we take what John said and go no further, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, does John communicate at least an opening that Christianity is a polytheist faith, believing in more than just the one God? That could really create a crisis. That could really create a problem. The great news is, a week from today, when we look at clause C and the Word was God, we'll unpack how John made sure that his hearers and readers couldn't drift into a polytheistic heresy. I hope this was good for you. It's been great for me so far, parts A and B of a 3-part series on John 1:1. And until we see each other again, Karis Kai Reine Humin, grace and peace to you.